Radio Shack Busters in their original widescreen format. Screen Mercury Tracer LTS.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Multiverse Movie Club, the very first episode of my new movie-centric podcast or video podcast, where I'll be talking about movies, maybe the odd TV show, but mostly movies. Movies that I like, movies that I hate, and everything in between. Joining me here on the very first episode is my ever-reliable co-host of the Comic Multiverse podcast, Joel, from the Caped Joel YouTube channel. How are you going, Joel?
I'm doing good. I'm even more of a co-host than ever before. I'm so happy when Matt pitched me this idea where I'm like, yes, a brand new podcast where you do even more of the work. Yes, please.
Yeah, no, I'm really happy to actually run the back end of this. This is something I've actually wanted to do for a long time. I've wanted to do a movie-centric podcast or a video podcast for a while, talk about movies that I like, movies I didn't like, and everything in between. And I thought, what the hell? I'll go ahead with it and I'll rope Joel into it, so if anything goes wrong, something terrible happens, he can share the blame as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's really how you make it in this podcast game. And for me, after doing like almost 400 episodes of the Comic Multiverse, and there's been weeks when we've had to like scrimp and scrape the bottom of the barrel to try and put a show together, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, let's do a show that's completely different, that's us just talking about movies that we like, doing something different. This should keep me sane and keep me from having a total breakdown with the Comic Multiverse. So yeah, I think it's about time, we spice things up in the podcast world.
Yeah, and I thought, with a movie podcast, we're not just going to be talking about movies. We're just going to go out and see a movie and then come back and talk about it.
Because everyone does that.
Yeah, so we're just going to be talking about cult movies. Movies that maybe Joel hasn't seen, movies that I might not have seen, movies that you, the viewer, may have not seen or may not have even heard of. I have like a very long list filled with films that I know Joel, for a fact, has not seen, ones that I really like, and ones that I know no one has seen.
Yeah, it's like a book club, but with movies. We don't always need to be topical. We don't always need to be hitting these things at the height of their fame or their conversation. It's just, let's just talk about movies there. We're like Caravan of Garbage, only, we could only afford one Australian, and me being a snow Australian, so,
I chose this first film. The idea is that I'll choose a film, then the next episode Joel will choose a film, and so on and so forth. Maybe if we get a guest on, they'll choose a film as well. And we've got a big spreadsheet of all these different films that we want to do and like maybe get to at some point. But the first film I chose, which was really because I first saw it when I first opened my spreadsheet.
Going alphabetically.
Yeah, kind of going alphabetically, yeah. But the first film we decided to choose is the 1988 remake of The Blob, directed by Chuck Russell and written by Chuck Russell and Frank Darabont.
Yes, the remake of the famous 1950s Blob movie that I feel like if people, even if they haven't seen it just through cultural osmosis, they know about it because it's like one of the most atypical, most famous, American drive-in B movies there. The Blob is probably, I would argue, like almost just below the famous, like, Hammer horror monsters and everything when we talk about, like great movie monsters and great movie creatures.
As you said, I think people may not have seen it, but they probably would have seen scenes from it, like when the Blob goes into the movie theater. It's also Steve McQueen's first big film as like a leading man type, like hero type.
That's
and
right.
If people know who Steve McQueen is, they'll probably know what this film is, being it's his first big break into the Hollywood industry.
It has a theme song which blows me away. When I was, looking into this, I'm like, wait, did I dream the fact that the original Blob movie has a campy, upbeat, like almost swing theme song? But no, it has it, and it's as weird as you think it is.
Beware of the blob, it creeps and leaps and glides and slides across the floor.
No, this one doesn't have a theme song, but this one came out in the 80s and it's a remake. And during the 80s, there was quite a fair number of remakes around. They were happening every other year. These, this, The Thing. Fly.
Okay, I'm glad you said that, because I really wanted to know, about how close is this to the remake of The Thing, which was also known at the time as The Thing from the Other World, because, very similar, resource pool, very similar, drive-in B-movies, but updated, made a little darker and grittier for a new, more modern at the time audience of the 80s.
Yeah, so The Thing was made in 1982, and The Fly was made in 1986.
Because I guess that is how nostalgia works, even for, B-movies and everything. People are always obsessed with stuff that happened 20 years ago, and the 80s was very, very good to the 50s, because this is also when you got the Archies and Happy Days and everything else.
It's also really funny when you think about it, where, the 80s had a bunch of these remakes, because they're not just The Thing and The Fly and all that. There's Scarface, Three Men and a Baby, Dirty Rotting Scoundrels, all these different films, and they kind of went away, and now they're sort of coming back now. They've just announced there's going to be another Goonies film. We're seeing remakes of stuff. I think there's meant to be a remake of The Blob happening at some point. I'm sure there's a remake of The Fly happening.
It's the cycle, man. It's what it happens. People grow up with stuff, and then 20 years later, they start making the things that they liked.
Yeah, it's the cycle, man. It's the cycle. But
yeah,
without further ado, let's talk about the film. And before, let's just talk about the director of the film, Chuck Russell.
Please do.
He's one of these guys that I've noticed there's a couple of these guys. There's this guy, Chuck Russell, Russell Macaulay, who did Highlander and that sort of stuff, Stephen Sommers, who did the Mummy films, Stephen Norrington.
Yeah.
All these guys who, at this point in time in the late 90s, early 90s, and late 80s, all had money thrown at them for blockbusters. They all directed The Mummy and the Highlander films and stuff like that. Movies that had a bit of a budget behind them and were big tentpole films. And then now they kind of just gone away. That this type of director has just kind of gone away, and you see him still get work here and there, but it's mostly in TV nowadays, which is a real shame.
Yeah, he did A Nightmare on Elm Street, too. There really is a generation of, these journeyman filmmakers who, could basically do anything. They didn't belong to any one genre. They were just, directors. Now it feels like more and more directors end up getting pigeonholed into doing just one thing. And then again, arguably, at the box office at least, there's less genre diversity than there ever has been before, where it's you better be damn good at doing franchises, you better be damn good at doing adaptations of comic books or video games, because that's all there is.
It's these guys get stuck doing direct-to-DVD stuff, sequels to more successful films that maybe didn't do too well, and they just, get the sequel on the direct-to-DVD, the red box or something, and it's these guys have one bad flop or, a flop in general, and they're just put in movie jail.
Forever, yeah. Yeah, get yourself a good streaming show if you want to do something different. Get yourself a Netflix original that people might watch for a week and then totally forget about.
Yeah, it's kind of a real shame that they do that. But along with Chuck Russell on this film is Frank Darabont, who helped him write the script.
Ah, a name we all know very well. Again, if you're younger, you probably know Frank Darabont from his work on The Walking Dead in the first couple seasons, at least when I was watching it.
Yeah, I think he did the first season. He definitely did the first season, the excellent first season. And I think he did some of the second season or all of it. And that's where they started fucking him over. That's why most of that season is set on Herschel's farm, the endless farm.
And then the endless farm where they go to the farm and never leave. But at least it gives us a classic line that we're still quoting to this day, Matt. T-Dog was the best of us.
Yeah, T-Dog, he was really the best of us. I miss that character, that guy who was just in the background and then suddenly thrust into main character status.
Oh, yeah. T-Dog lives in our hearts and always will.
Yeah, and The Walking Dead is the least of what Frank Darabont has done. It's a minuscule thing in his wide career. He's done so much cool stuff that I'm sure everyone has seen at one point or another. He did Green Mile, he did Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, lots of shit you like he's been involved in, and it has worked steadily forever.
Yeah, he's been working pretty steadily for decades now, but enough about directors and writers, let's talk about the movie. So the movie opens, and you actually think the blob has already hit the town, because we see all these shots of just a ghost town. Just
super creepy.
No one's in the streets, the wind's howling through it, leaves are blowing through. There's just no one about. But the town hasn't been had by the Blob just yet. The town is called Arborville, and it's in California, I believe, though it's meant to represent, like, any small town. They haven't been had by the Blob because they are actually all at the local high school football game.
Ah, yes, Americans love their high school football, don't they?
Yes, they do. It's like a religion to them, isn't it?
It's a cultural thing, because, again, you're Australian, I'm Canadian. Culturally, that thing has never quite translated. Though here I kind of get it. They're like, well, why does everyone care so much about a high school sports? Oh, because we're a dying ski town that hasn't had snow in forever. Everyone is hard up, everyone is miserable, and because this is 88, no one can Netflix and chill, so this is like the only thing that passes for entertainment in this town.
Yeah, it's like everything just shuts down in this town. You have to go to the football game.
No, and again, I'm glad we both decided to take this seriously and take some notes. My first note that I wrote here, man, these cheerleaders and all these students are really old for high school sports, but then I'm reminded, oh yeah, it's the 80s, they're all smoking unfiltered cigarettes and have carcinogens in everything. This is before people wore sunscreen. 18-year-olds looked way older.
Yeah, the 18-year-olds look like they are 30, bordering on 40.
The other thing that really got me in right away, because you told me not to research this before we started, so I didn't look at the cast, and I didn't look any trailers, but I can definitely tell you might have picked this movie with me in mind, even just a little subconsciously, because our female lead for this movie is Shawnee Smith, aka Amanda from all the Saw movies.
Yeah.
Very, very young. I think this might have been one of her first roles.
Yeah. She plays Meg Penny, who is like your typical cheerleader character. Also, it seems, because unlike a lot of horror films of this era, it kind of subverts your expectations of what a horror film should and could be.
It's very apt. I'm glad you said that, Matt, because that was the one I walked away with after seeing it for the first time, like literally just a couple hours ago before we started. Man, that was subversive for an 80s horror movie, and it is, as we will explain.
Yeah, so Meg's a cheerleader, and then we get to Donovan Leitch, who plays Paul Taylor. He's kind of our quote-unquote main character. I put that in quotation marks just because something might happen a little later on that kind of subverts that expectation. He's your typical quarterback guy. He wants to go and date Meg, and he actually ends up asking her out after getting absolutely pummeled on the football field.
Great bit early on where he just gets royally fucked up and then has a pretty good comeback.
Hey, got any plans this evening?
There's a lot of actually pretty solid one-liner writing in this, but then again, it was the era of the one-liner.
Again, this is Frank Darabont. He knows how to make characters cool and interesting when you first meet them.
And indeed he does.
Yeah, and Paul's got a friend named Scott who, again, is kind of like that jock quarterback type character who may end up getting a little bit rapey a little bit later on in the film, I think.
Oh yeah, there's some skeevy pervery that happens later on in this movie where I'm like, holy shit, are they actually going here with this? But don't worry, it's a horror movie, so he ends up getting brutally murdered, as is always the case.
Yeah. And then we catch up with Kevin Dillon's character, Brian Flagg, which I think is a reference to Stephen King's novel The Stand, because one of the main characters in there, I think his name's Randall Flagg.
It's a small-town punk with his leather jacket trying to jump his bike over the impossible jump, which actually ends up being an excellent bit of signposting for later on in the movie. The thing that hit me is I'm like, yeah, this guy's a dirty punk. He has long hair and rides a motorcycle, but he also has like a beautiful white shirt that never really gets dirty through the whole movie.
Yeah, no, it's like a Han Solo shirt, because it's got like that fold thing that Han Solo's shirt has that eventually sometime later on in the film comes loose and it kind of looks like Han Solo's shirt.
I just kept looking at that shirt, and then I kept thinking, I'm like, Kevin Dillon, where do I know this guy from? He's Matt Dillon's brother.
Yeah, he plays Johnny Drama on Entourage.
Victory!
How about that? Holy shit. Again, this movie is filled with actors where it's like, oh yeah, you have worked steadily.
He's that guy.
Yeah.
He's that guy.
This movie is filled with that guys and that girls even. And it's like, oh yeah, you never became like a leading man. You never really became like the top star, but you've worked steadily for decades, and that's super impressive.
Yeah, and it's filled with a bunch of people who have worked with Frank Darabont across his entire career, his entire movie career and TV career as well. After we meet Brian Flagg, we're also introduced to like this homeless character who appears in the first part of the film, and he's kind of like the patient zero. Him and his dog are kind of like the patient zero. We then also meet a few more members of the town. We meet the sheriff, whose name's Herb Geller.
And again, you know, the movie keeps playing fast and loose because they introduce so many characters so quickly, where it's like, oh, where it's like, well, who's our real lead on this one? Is the jock our lead? Is this small town sheriff our lead? And because they give everyone a little bit of business to do with the sheriff, he really likes the lady who owns the local diner, and you know, he tries really hard.
Are you asking me out?
Yeah, well, I guess I am.
Yeah, he tries really hard to take her out on a date, and all throughout the movie, he keeps looking at the card, knowing that he has to be there by 11, and I'm like, huh, you know, that's a little extra depth, little extra physical business for a character like this, who could easily have been a throwaway character in any other horror movie in this same genre.
And yeah, we see that Brian and Herb kind of have this relationship where Herb is always busting Brian for something. We're never really made sure what that is. Like,
no.
He's just like a punk who's like given a hard time.
It's very classic of the era, you know, oh, this is the 80s, this is Reagan's America, you gotta conform, hippie, you know, cut your hair and step in line, because, you know, you're 18, so, you know, next time you screw up, I'm sending your ass right to juvie.
Well, I hear you have a birthday coming up. No more Juvie Hall, right?
Yeah, right.
Which ends up kind of being a major undercurrent of the movie too, where it's like, wow, you know, they keep treating this guy as a villain, as a punk, just because of how he looks. But you know, oh, looks can actually be quite deceiving.
Yeah, he might actually end up becoming the hero a little later on.
Yes, of the whole movie. Again, they do a very interesting thing where you do not know who the actual real protagonist of this movie is until like 20-30 minutes in.
Yeah, you spend a lot of time with all of these characters. You see Meg go home to see her parents. Brian goes about his day at the auto repair shop. Herb does his rounds. Scott and Paul go to the drugstore to buy condoms.
Oh, that scene is hilarious. As I found in my research, apparently that really happened to the director and his friend, so he had to put it in a movie because it's just hilarious. You're buying condoms, and then the local priest shows up and goes, oh, I haven't seen yet Sunday Mass in a bit. You want ribbed or non-ribbed, buddy?
Haven't seen you at the Sunday services lately.
Oh, you want the ribbed or the regular?
Yeah, no, it's kind of a funny little joke. And in that drugstore scene as well is the preacher, Father Mika, the preacher Mika. Right off the bat, you kind of think, this guy's a little bit of a weirdo.
Yes, is he ever?
This preacher Mika is played by Del Close, who is character actor, much like everyone else in this film. And he was actually in one of the BLOB sequels, one of the original BLOB sequels.
Yes, that's right. He was in the sequel, and there's kind of some weird sequel connection between that and the end of this movie.
There is a little bit of a connection to the end of this film with that BLOB sequel, but the Reverend's really interesting because he doesn't play like what you'd usually expect a reverend in these films to do, which is like be like kind of the drunk doomsayer reverend. He kind of plays that in reverse.
Yes, does he ever? Yeah, it's so crazy. This movie actually gives minor characters like the Reverend arcs you would not expect, that by the time the movie is over, where it's like, oh wow, they were actually very much changed by their interaction with the Blob. You don't normally see that in horror movies. Normally, people in horror movies are all just, cannon fodder for the monster.
Yeah, you think of things like Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, where you get a little bit of hint at character with these people, but then you don't really get a lot because they're just cannon fodder for the villain.
Yeah, because it's like, why even bother? And that's not to say that this Blob remake doesn't have a pretty high body count. It really does.
Oh, yeah, no, it fucking does.
It has a huge body count, and yet at the same time, it feels smaller than some of the other ones at the same time. It's an intimate body count, where it's like, look, we kill people for maximum effect, not just because we can.
It's funny because because it's slow, because like in the first like
Very
30-40 minutes there's only like 2 deaths, and then once it gets into the town it starts ramping up. It's almost like the Blob itself. The Blob itself is slow, so the movie itself kind of gets off to a slow start,
and yet faster than in the original. You could tell they had to hypercharge it for the 80s audience here. And as far as horror movie villains go, the Blob is very, by its nature, malleable. It can get into small spaces. It can, you know, climb up on people. It can do all sorts of crazy... It can stick to ceilings.
Yes, because as we soon see, the Blob finally makes landfall, comes in a meteor.
Like it did in the original.
And then the hobo and his dog find it out in the woods, and of course, like everyone would, they go and poke it with a stick.
Yeah, and I mean, naturally.
But because this is the Blob, it actually ends up like climbing up the stick, like it shoots itself up the stick onto his arm.
It's funny, as I sat here and watched this movie, obviously because I have to think of everything in comic book context. Hey, the Blob in the meteor that, you know, attaches to people, and it's kind of like
symbiote.
It's a parasite that eats people from inside out. When they created Venom, when they created the symbiote, were they just ripping off the Blob?
Probably.
Is Venom just the Blob? Again, everyone get in the comments and tell me if you think Venom is just the Blob, or maybe the Blob is another symbiote from the Clintar homeworld, maybe.
Ooh, yeah, because it's like a pinkish shred, isn't it?
Right, which I don't think we really have. Hey, who owns the rights to the Blob? Let's have that, Venom versus the Blob.
But yeah, it latches onto his arm, and we don't actually see the hobo for quite a while yet. We then catch up with all our other characters. Paul goes on a date with Meg, meets her father. We get that cool, funny interaction with the condoms. And they end up going on a date out into the middle of like nowhere. And then they run into Brian and the hobo, because Brian finds him and he like runs off into the bush after this homeless guy to try and find out what he's doing, because he goes at his hand with like an axe, and he hits his hand with an axe and it starts bleeding, and the Blob just like gloms on over it to like keep him alive almost.
Again, like a symbiote there, it's self-repairing and self-healing. And also, this is like our first like big effect shot of the movie. Like, ooh, look what we can do with the Blob. And yeah, you know what, honestly, for the time period, 88, and for the fact I think the budget for this movie was only like $10 million when I researched it, it's pretty goddamn impressive what they do with this. I believe the special effects studio was handled in part by the same people who did Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah, the guy who was doing the lead effects on this is a guy called Tony Gardner, who was actually taking over from someone who apparently just quit the film for some reason. And then what's funny is that Tony wasn't actually meant to do this, because he at the time was like quite young. I think he was in his like early 20s, maybe even younger, and he lied about his age. I mean, like, yeah, no, I'm like 30. Yeah, I know exactly what I'm doing. You know, just let me do this. Give me a chance.
As the kids say, you didn't need to go that hard, The Blob, 1988, but this movie goes so fucking hard in many places.
It does, doesn't it?
It does, and like not only does it go hard, but like the Blob looks like it hurts. Like they really shine a light on the suffering and the pain that all these people are going through. They basically melt.
The stuff that it secretes is like an acid, so it like melts stuff down and breaks stuff down. And the Blob was made from a chemical that, or is like partially made from a chemical that was used to thicken milkshakes up at the time. No, it's probably a chemical they still use in the United States.
Now, how poison was it in real life? Because that's definitely the era, too, where it's like, yes, this is the 80s, when film sets were not nearly as safe as they are now.
They were, but I imagine it was probably safer than the 58 version, which was probably made from tar and asbestos or something like that.
Well, you see, we start with a nice tar base, then we cover it with asbestos, taking drags off their cigarettes. Yes, this'll be great.
Yeah, so Brian, Paul, Meg, and this hobo end up going to the hospital, and I just love how uncaring this hospital is.
Excuse me, nurse.
One moment, please.
I love nothing has changed in the American medical industry. Going to the hospital still absolutely sucks balls. Fill out a couple forms while we dehumanize you and not look you in the eye. And I have to wonder, did the lady, because it's a small town, assumedly she knew that guy was unhoused, and is she like, well, he doesn't have any insurance, so I don't really give a shit.
Yeah, but they eventually admit the homeless guy, and they put him in a room, and they go get the doctor eventually, who's played by Jack fucking Nance. They eventually come and see the doctor, and he is all fucked up.
What is this?
As they pull the sheet back, they find that his lower half is just completely been dissolved.
And this is what I would call the first big subversion of the horror movie tropes, where it's like, okay, so clearly our jock lead, Paul, he sees it there, and he's like, oh no, you know, the blob has got this guy, won't anyone believe me? And I'm like, oh yeah, this is where it's gonna start, they're all gonna think he's crazy, and no one's gonna believe there's a blob until they're all dead. No, the doctor sees right away how fucked up he is.
Yeah, and he's like, oh shit, there is something going on here, and then Paul runs to go and call the police, because, you know, something's happening, and the blob is just gone, like it's gone from the room, they don't know where it is, but that's when we find out that it's stalking Paul. It's like hiding behind like a door on a roof, and it ends up dropping down on top of him.
Where is he now?
And this is another subversion, because it's dropped on Paul, and now Paul is dead. Paul is fucking dead. Our main character has died 30-something minutes into the film.
Just melted into ooze. Yes, yeah. Paul, our all-American, clean-cut football-playing hero is dead 20 minutes into the movie, scarring poor Meg forever. And again, because I did a little research before we started here, apparently in that scene, they lied to Shawnee Smith and told her, oh yeah, it's going to be a puppet. We're going to be doing this with a puppet. She didn't know that they were going to like actually put some shit on the real actor and everything. So her screams of anguish there, actually pretty real.
It is horrific, because the blob is like consuming him, but also climbing out of a window to escape. So it's like pulling his skin off his face as it does it. It's horrific.
It is a shockingly good effect, and again, to think they only made this for $10 million. I know a constant debate you and I hear all the time on social media is like, you know, why does CGI, why do computer-generated images and special effects seemingly look worse now than they did 20, 30 years ago? And the answer is obvious if you pay attention. That is all. But it used to be back in the day, not every movie relied on special effects. Now basically every movie does. So all of these studios, all these, you know, creature makers and effects makers and everything are overworked and stretched incredibly thin. And it's a shame, because, you know, this is clearly something where it's like, ah, yes, we're making a monster movie in a genre where you don't get to see or do cool stuff like this all the time. So they really got to buckle down and think, what's the best way to make the blob look as sick and horrifying as possible?
Yeah, I think we got some like stop motion, there's some puppetry stuff, blue screen stuff where actors are like running on a treadmill with rear screen projection, and then they're just throwing ooze at the actors.
But yeah, Paul gets frickin' owned, and the cops naturally jump to the conclusion where it's like, well, if the captain of the football team is dead, it must be that goddamn long-haired punk kid who done did it.
Yeah, they immediately don't believe Meg, because she's a woman and she's a teenager, and they don't believe teenagers in these horror films.
No, they really don't. Because if they did, the movie would be over in like 20 minutes. But yeah, they don't believe her, and they instantly jam up, Brian, who ends up essentially becoming our new main character now.
Yeah, and again, it's kind of like a subversion, because you think that Brian, because of all the setup he's had of, he's the bad guy, he's going to be kind of the antagonist of the film, or like the human antagonist, where he's going to be fighting against our heroes.
Or at least die first doing something stupid.
Yeah, he actually ends up becoming the hero of the film, or at least the latter half of the film, because Meg doesn't believe he did this, knows he has nothing to do with this. The police actually arrest him, and they are intent on charging him with something. But then, of course, Brian doesn't make it easy for the cops either, because he just starts like antagonizing them and just like making fun of them, and he ends up licking Brian's face.
Go ahead, hit me.
He licks a man, and I have to wonder, was that in the script, or did Kevin Dillon just do that? because it feels like improv. In fact, there's quite a few things in this movie where it's like, that felt like improv, or that felt like something a person would actually do in that situation.
Yeah, again, it subverts that expectation of like what a horror film should do, like where you get characters like trapped somewhere and they say like, oh, we don't know what to do. Well, they do the obvious situation and that gets them out of that situation.
And the other deputy also will kind of end up having a surprising arc too by the end of this, where he goes from hating Brian with a burning passion to, in the big climax of the movie, actually taking up for him in a way you would not expect.
Yeah, before getting folded in half and pulled through a bookcase.
Oh, that's so fucking brutal. I love that shit. Whenever anyone gets pulled through a very small space, again, hey, Nightmare on Elm Street, the first one, does it excellently, and they do it here too. Whenever I see that, I'm like, oh, that's my favorite. I love it when that happens.
So Meg comes to bail Brian out, but he's been let out because they haven't got anything to charge him with. And they both end up going to Fran's cafe diner place in town, which is the woman that the sheriff really likes. This is where we get our next kill, because Fran's dishwasher, chef, cook guy ends up trying to unblock a drain that's been blocked for a while, and he gets pulled into the drain by the blob, and he gets pulled through a drain.
It's pretty tiny, and this is also why whenever I have a clog anywhere in my house, I just never deal with it, because I am
might be a blob.
There might be
I
am constantly afraid of blob attacks, and this movie only goes on to confirm my blob in the drain fear. Could be hair, could be some, chicken fat that's congealed down there, or it could be a killer blob. So I should probably just leave it and never fix any of the clogs in my house.
And I really like this because it's so gruesome, because you get to see him be pulled into this drain and the drain bulges when it gets to like his feet and body.
Wonderfully gross is probably the best look we actually get at the blob itself, and it's meaty and gooey, and it's gooey. They really nailed the gross aspect of it, where it's like this is a gross ass clog.
It's like when you've got like frozen meat and it's still thawing, but it's still a little bit frozen, and it's got like water through it, and it's just like that kind of gooey mess.
The worst state for any meat to be, I think we can all agree. I love meat, but that is the worst state of it, where if I see enough meat like that, we're like, well, this has ruined my appetite.
Yeah, now the blob is in the diner, and Brian and Meg end up running into the freezer, and they are actually kind of safe, because the blob does not like
signposting.
Just something from the original.
Yes, they killed it with CO2 canisters in that.
It's not dead, is it? No, it's not. Just frozen.
I really like this bit, because the blob comes up through the drain and Brian and Meg run off to the freezer, completely ditching Fran, the cafe owner.
Who let them stay late and fed them.
Yeah, free of charge. And again, this is a scene where you think like, oh, this character's going to die, because that's how it would go in a horror film. But again, subversion of expectations, as Fran, she doesn't like go for a door or anything. She just like smashes herself out of one of the windows into the nearby alleyway.
Mad respect to Fran, who wanted to live and knew what she had to do. Unfortunately, she ends up getting cornered in the phone booth, because this is the 80s, and no one can just call on their cell, unfortunately.
And this is like Frank Darabont, like, he likes doing like misery, desperation stuff, and this is exactly what this scene is, because she gets into the phone booth at the end of the block to call Herb, to call the sheriff and tell him what's going on. And as she's calling him, the blobs come out and like followed her, and it's like consuming the phone booth she's in. It's like crawling up around the sides and like slowly trying to seep in through the doors and the cracks.
Best shot in the movie, easily my favorite shot in the whole movie.
And then as she's calling, the operator says like, oh, she hasn't seen Herb for a while, and then Herb like is in the blob, and you get to see him, and he's still being digested, and his eyes moving, and it's just so gross.
Give you hope just to take it away.
And then the blob just like crushes the phone booth in, and it's this fantastic shot. I love how they got this. It's from inside the phone booth, and you see it smash in, and then they've got obviously like a dummy there dressed up like the actress, and it just obliterates the dummy and it just goes everywhere. It's a great shot.
It is. It's a really, really impressive shot.
Yeah.
And also, whenever I see, a frantic woman in a phone booth and everything in a monster movie, I'm like, ooh, is this a Birds reference? Or are you doing a little Hitchcock?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little Hitchcocky, and I dig it for that. But yeah, so already the Blob has basically cut a swath through most of the characters we have had introduced so far.
But then, yeah, after the incident at the cafe, the priest turns up and he finds like the aftermath of it. Everyone's gone, he can't find anyone. But then he finds the crystallized version of the blob in the freezer, and he ends up like bottling some of it and kind of taking it with him.
Yes, that was my feeling too. I'm like, that's a weird character choice that he would chose to do that. I'm sure that won't come back by the end of the movie. I'm sure everyone will forget about that. I do like how the frozen blob shards look, though. They're all pink, and they have this kind of like electric shimmer to them.
Yeah, that was the only shots in the film that had CGI in it, was that shimmer.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Meg and Brian go to the police station to talk with the sheriff or the deputy, but they find out that the sheriff hasn't been heard from because obviously he's dead. But the deputy is out looking for the killer, whoever killed this homeless guy, and he's out looking where the meteor landed, and that's when we're introduced to the military of the film. And these military are a group of scientists who are led by Dr. Meadows, who is played by John Seneca, who, again, is another one of those guys. He's that guy. I've seen him before. Also, I kind of like what they do with Dr. Meadows here, because you think, military's turned up, they're just going to start killing everyone, which they kind of end up trying to do it near the end of the film. But when we're introduced to Dr. Meadows here, he's like this kindly old man.
I'm Dr. Meadows. We're a government-sanctioned biological containment team.
Biological containment?
We're microbe hunters, young lady.
He does. He really lulls you into a full sense of security.
Yeah.
His voice is great, and also those hazmat suits they wear look very familiar to like the ones you would see in old B sci-fi, be it the Thing from Another World or the original The Blob. Because I never watched the trailer or anything, I actually had the opposite thing when I saw this, where I'm like, oh well, here's the good guys now. They're gonna shoot the monster at the end, which makes what happens later even more of an interesting subversion.
We also learn a little bit about the blob here, as we assume it's alien, much like in the original it was alien, but here we actually learn that it's man-made, and it actually came from a satellite that they were studying.
That organism is potentially the greatest breakthrough in weapons research since man split the atom. What we do here will affect the balance of world power.
Again, because it's the 80s, Cold War and everything with the Russians. We need the ultimate weapon, Matt, even if it's a blob that might destroy us all, which again, hey, now we're getting into the cultural commentary of the time. Is everything we're doing to defeat the Russians ultimately good if it costs us our soul or it makes us do something more terrible? Which, again, which sets up Brian as the ultimate protagonist here, because he's got a problem with authority, man. He's a rebel without a cause, but wouldn't you know it, he was totally right in this scenario to be, to be a conspiracy theorist and to do his own blob research.
Yeah, the guy blaming the government this time was actually right.
This time, holy shit.
And yeah, we learned that the blob started out life as like a virus that somehow mutated into this.
That's the source of our worries. A troublesome souvenir from space.
What?
A meteorite.
It's never really made clear what it is, and I really like that. A lot of these films in this age did that, where they would like hint at something but never really tell you, kind of like The Thing, how you'd never know what exactly it was or what it would do.
I mean, to hear Meadows tell it, he seeks to imply that it might actually have been somehow related to what killed the dinosaurs, because he says, no, it wasn't the meteor that killed them, it was the disease the meteor brought that killed them.
Yeah, they like resuscitated like an ancient virus, which is something scientists actually do.
Yes, absolutely. To where I'm like, hey, where's that prequel movie? Where's the Blob versus the cast of Jurassic Park, where it's just eating fucking dinosaurs and velociraptors?
Yeah, that was on like Site D, where they're bringing back viruses, and that it was an island full of viruses. But yeah, Meg and Brian are separated because Meg decides to go into town so she can be with her parents and like sort of figure out what to do. And Brian, of course, is like, no man, military bad, so he escapes and goes back for his motorcycle and evades them and ends up in the sewers.
Because I only love two things, man: my hair and my bike. But yeah, so he does that, and also too, we didn't even talk about it, but Meg has a little brother too as well, who gets a whole little cycle.
They do like a Chekhov's gun sort of thing with him here, because him and his little friend are going to go see a horror film. They're seeing like Garden Tool Massacre 3 or something or other. So basically a send up on, Friday the 13th.
Very much so.
Nightmare on Elm Street sort of stuff.
This probably has one of the best instances of a movie within a movie I've ever seen, because, when the Blob, the Blob already kills a couple, and then I'm like, oh, Jesus, is he going to kill another couple who is just trying to make out? But then they pull back, and oh no, you're actually watching Garden Party Massacre 3. And I'm like, oh, isn't that fun that this movie is itself a remake and a throwback to the creature feature B movies of the 50s, and they're kind of tagging the new slasher movies that kind of subsumed and took over those old type of movies.
I always really like it when a movie has like a movie in it and it's like specifically shot for this film.
Also, in the original Blob, I think they're seeing a movie too, because there's a movie Massacre in that one as well. I don't know what horror movie they were watching in that one, but there is a movie within a movie in that one too.
Yeah, I'm sure it's like what I said earlier on in the video, where it's like it's a scene everyone's already seen, where it's like the Blob pushing through the
yes, the one everyone recreates.
But yeah, no, we're talking about the brother, and there's a Chekhov's gun situation, because when we first meet him, he's got like this jacket that he can't get the zipper undone on it. The zipper's like busted, and he puts it on before going to the cinema with his little friend, and the zipper obviously does not work. We also didn't talk about Scott, Paul's friend, who ends up dying before the Blob gets into town. He's like the second death after Paul and the homeless guy. We get to see a little bit about him and how he's a little bit rapey. He's got this whole set up in his like trunk.
Full of booze. He has a full bar in the back of his trunk.
And he's kind of like this player with the ladies in town, because he's given the girl he's dating his football ring.
You're wearing my ring. That makes you my girl.
But as we find out in the trunk with all the booze, he's got this like a bag full of them that he obviously gives to every girl he ever dates to make them feel special.
Yeah, again, this guy definitely was just waiting for Rohypnol to be invented.
Yeah, no, don't drink that. It's just 90% ethanol. It's made to get you drunk as quick as possible. Yeah, so no, like, he's like making this drink, and then he comes back and the girl's asleep, and he starts getting like handsy and quite a bit rapey with her. And then her like face caves in and all these tentacles shoot out at him and grab him and just like consume him. And oh, it's amazing. It's a great looking prosthetic with this woman's face caving in and all these tentacles grabbing him.
The Blob does not play with consent, in case you were wondering.
Absolutely. But yeah, no, he got a cool kill. But back in the present of the movie, Meg goes to try and find her brother in the movie theater, because the town's being evacuated now by the military. It's being done, they mention, they have a line where it's being evacuated in streets, but there's like this movie theater and it's just full of people.
Also, too, a movie that has clearly been out for a bit, because part of the running gag is that the kids are trying to watch this R-rated movie they snuck into, but some Cletus yokel asshole in the back keeps spoiling every kill before it happens, because he's clearly seen it before and brought a date. And I mean, that's not cool, man. I'm glad the Blob kills him next as well.
Well, the Blob kills him. The Blob kills the projectionist. He's this guy up in the booth. He's got like a yo-yo. It's a really cool kill. His AC isn't working in the room, so he sticks his head into the AC vent, of course, and gets just nicked by the Blob.
Naturally.
But then another usher comes up to see what's going on.
And also, the Blob gets bigger every time it kills someone, but you can still see that it retains some parts of people, so you'll see faces, you'll see skeletons, you'll see the yo-yos, and that's all gross and horrifying. But in that scene, the only thing I could think about was, man, for a small-town movie theater, these ushers are really well-dressed. Suit jackets, bow ties, all of them.
Yeah, no, they are. It's like an old-school cinema, you know, they got the costume and they got the torch ushering people, they rip the ticket when you go in.
Yeah, how old school is this? Because the movie never says what year we're in. I'm assuming it's modern era because, what is it, Eddie, Meg's brother's little friend there, has a Walkman that he takes with him everywhere, so I'm assuming that's new technology, but everything about...
He's even listening to it when he's watching the movie. He's got the headphones on, obviously listening to the music.
Friggin' Walkman kids were the iPad kids of their day, is what I'm saying. I don't think they ever actually say what state the movie takes place in. I think they mentioned they're sending samples to Sacramento, which makes me think Florida, but I do believe this was actually filmed in New Orleans.
Yeah, I think this was filmed in, like, Alabama or Louisiana area sort of thing, but it's meant to be California, or like that area of the United States.
I just kind of laughed. I'm like, a California ski town. I'm like, well, I guess California's a pretty big state, so, you know.
Guess it is a snow village, or like a snow ski town, because that's what Brian is working on in his garage job. He's got like this snow blower,
snow machine, snow machine.
Yeah. Which comes back again, Chekhov's snowmaking truck.
Tell me about it. I have never in a film seen a snow machine get as massive a payoff as this snow machine does.
Yeah, and then his boss, who's played by Bo Billingsley, is kind of chilling beers in the
as you do
cooler part of the machine.
Yeah, as you do. What else are you going to do? That's another thing too. His boss in this movie is a black man. I like that for this small town American place. There, it's actually quite racially diverse. Which again is something you didn't see in 80s movies all the time.
Yeah, and Bo was like an accomplished voice actor. He played Jet Black in Cowboy Bebop.
Oh my God, was that Jet? I've actually just been showing Cowboy Bebop to someone for the very first time. Oh my God, that checks out. That is Jet Black. Oh my God. Where were we? Oh yeah, Meg was trying to save her brother and his stupid little friend from the movie theater. And this is probably like the showiest part of the movie, where it's like, okay, let's have the blob kill multiple people at once. Let's have a big strobe effect. Let's have, Meg trying to save someone on the ground. But oh no, they're all melting and sticking to the ground.
Yeah, that strobe effect in the theater with the blob was apparently done on purpose, because the blob there in that scene was stop motion, and that kind of hides all the imperfections of it.
Yes, that was the feeling I got. It was very, again, if you know anything about movie making, if you kind of have to hide an effect that's maybe not 100% there yet, you film it in the dark and you film it far away.
That's the really interesting thing about this film, is that there's not a lot of shots in it that, like, you're like, oh, that really hasn't aged well. In fact, a lot of the effects have actually aged well, and there's like one or two that aren't. Like, there's one where they're back in the diner and they're like running away from it, and it's like on the ceiling above them, and it's very clearly like rear screen projection. But other than that, a lot of the shots look like really quite good.
Yeah, I would say most of the effects in this have aged surprisingly well for a movie that's almost like, 30, 40 years old now?
Yeah, and as you said, this is the kind of showy part of the film, because, the blob is attacking the cinema. You get people, being pulled up onto the ceiling. Meg finds one of her friends who is, like, half melted onto the floor. But it just kind of looks like she just fell on the floor of a movie theater, which is just sticky floor in general.
I mean, that butter, as we all know, is very corrosive if you get it in your eyes, and that's what happens, kids.
Yeah, because it's not butter. Again, it's probably a chemical that doesn't exist anymore, like the stuff they used to thicken up the blob.
But I sure don't feel like eating popcorn after this scene, because a bunch of people, they get royally fucked up, and the blob is like basically almost as big as it'll be, because again, in the original Blob, there was a point where it was the size of the whole town, and it basically became like an American kaiju. It doesn't quite do that here, but it gets pretty close.
It does. It gets pretty big, and it also begins to seemingly target Meg and her brother and his little friend, because it follows them. They find a way out of into the back alley of the movie theater, and it follows them out the back door. There's hundreds of other people fleeing for their lives that it could have taken, but it targets them, and I like to think it's because it's holding a grudge against Meg, because Meg heard it earlier on in the film with the freezer door.
Yeah, that is the thing about the Blob, as, compared to other horror movie villains. It doesn't speak, it doesn't really have a motivation outside just, eat and destroy everything around it, but you're absolutely right. It does kind of, single her out for seemingly no reason, except for being like, hey, I read the script, you're the female lead, I need to start chasing you now.
Yeah, and the blob follows them into the sewer. It actually ends up grabbing Meg's hair, and because it can melt through stuff, it just melts through the hair, but she's able to get herself free, and they fall into the sewer, which is not a place you really want to be falling into.
No, not at all. Also, talk about a massively spacious sewer. I know that's a thing in movies and TV, that sewers are always so much bigger, but this is like a massive underground chamber.
This is like a sewer for like a city like New York.
Right.
Not for this like sleepy little town in Northern California.
Right. Where are the Ninja Turtles is all I'm asking. When are the Ninja Turtles going to come in and help out?
We see Splinter later on. He gets eaten by the Blob.
Yeah, does he ever? Also, the Blob can swim too and is completely proficient underwater.
Yeah, it's such a trap.
Yeah, it does, right? So clearly, there's a level of intelligence behind this thing, a level of sentience.
And here again, the movie actually ends up subverting expectations, because you think they're going to get away. They're climbing up this pipe to like a storm drain to get out, and Meg's brother's friend actually ends up getting taken by the thing and actually just pulled back into the water. Never in these horror films do you ever see kids getting killed.
Oh, he gets owned in this movie.
Yeah, that's what you get for listening to your Walkman in the cinema, you little jerk.
In the movies, yeah, there you go. How dare you. Gets it really bad. Yeah, that kind of shocked me too. I'm like, oh my god, they killed that child. They killed a child.
Yeah, it's actually pretty cool and pretty refreshing. I'm glad they actually went there and actually pulled it off.
Yeah, that takes some guts, that takes some balls, and I'm sure they had to fight for that too. Like, you could not do that nowadays, even in an R-rated movie, even in like a really brutal one. Well, actually, I guess Art the Clown does kill some children in Terrifier, but I don't think they're nearly as brutal about it. Even those movies that are known for being sick, gross, end up kind of turning the camera away. This is like, nah, he totally dies and he totally melts, bro. And Meg sees it and she's horrified by it.
Oh, yeah, she's horrified, and rightly so.
This, of course, leads us into our big Act 3 now. All hope is seemingly lost. How are they going to get out of this one?
The military in the town, and they come into the sewer, and they try to attack the Blob.
You knew those guys were going to die. The second they showed up, I'm like, oh, hey, where are your red shirts, fellas?
While the soldiers fight the Blob, Meg ends up running down a different tunnel away from them, and she actually ends up running into Brian, who we hadn't seen for a little bit in the movie.
I mean, they're big tunnels, it's very easy to get lost in there.
Big enough to drive his motorbike in.
Right, that's what blew my mind. I'm like, this is the most spacious sewer ever.
We do have a cool shot, because he ends up saving Meg, and we get a cool shot of him riding his motorbike up along the side of the sewer tunnel just to get around the Blob, since the Blob's following them. Throughout the whole film, he's been kind of like, okay, I've got to go back for my motorbike in the woods, I've got to fix it, and I'm going to use it to get out of town, and like he just like ditches it here. It's like, nah, it's done. We'll forget about it. We don't need it anymore. I want to say maybe this is some sort of symbolism about him like ditching his former life and, taking up the path of a hero or something.
There's something in there. Also, it's flooded with sewer water, which means you ain't getting it out there anytime soon, so you probably should abandon it.
And yeah, one of the lone survivor soldier is Bill Moseley, who you will definitely recognize because he's Chop Chop in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. He's Otis Driftwood in The Devil's Rejects.
Okay, wow, he is so young in this. The world has not beaten him down yet. Okay, see, that was driving me crazy too, because I didn't read the cast list before we came in. Yeah, oh wow, that is Bill. Holy shit!
In this, he is uncredited. I think
probably
this is like the fourth film, so I think he just went uncredited, and he's just like a guy.
God, he's been in horror movies forever, hasn't he?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And he still is.
He is. Yeah. He earned his seat at the horror convention many times over. If you see Bill Moseley, tell him we're all huge fans.
But yeah, he's the only survivor, and he has Chekhov's rocket launcher with him.
Yeah, he does. He also uses the rocket launcher, too, for a minute before that, which I really appreciate. I was instantly reminded of the scene in Falling Down where the little kid shows defense how to use the rocket launcher.
Yeah, he does use the rocket launcher, so they try to get up the manhole cover, and the doctor and like all his military guys park a truck over the top of it, so they use the Chekhov's rocket launcher from Bill Moseley's character earlier on, and he like one hand shoots it up the tunnel, and it just blows the truck up. It's a really cool shot.
You won't listen to me? Listen to this.
what a big dick tough motherfucker he is to one-hand a rocket launcher.
So they end up getting out, but in doing that, in blowing up the truck and creating so much noise, they've kind of signaled for the blob and where it needs to go as well. This is also that part we talked about earlier where Deputy Bill ends up kind of turning on the military and kind of believing Brian for a change and actually siding with him on what the military are doing in the town. They're not really there for altruistic purposes.
Listen to me, Briggs. Think for a minute. Do you suppose an army of guys in plastic suits show up every time a meteor falls?
Yeah, but Brian, who ends up making a great case for himself, being like, look, how fast the government got here. It's because they already knew it was here. Do you think they're going to let any of us go? You think they're going to let any of us survive? No, they're going to kill us all to keep this secret. And to see even the dumbass deputy get it, oh yeah, shit, I guess you're right. And when they're going to shoot the kid, the deputy turns the gun on Meadows and his guy. And I'm like, wow, what a great scene. And in my mind, I'm like, you got a 6-shooter, man. They got M16s on you. You are not going to win this gunfight. I'm sorry.
Yeah, while all this is happening, the blob ends up coming up and it grabs Meadow, and we actually get a really cool shot where it doesn't like consume him as one being. It actually gets into his suit, so we see his like hazmat suit start to fill up with the blob. It's a really cool shot.
Yeah, no, he does not survive that. He gets owned completely. And then next, the army guys, which it feels like in any other, like, B science fiction movie, this is would have done him. It's like, okay, we've got the blob corner. Shoot him with all the guns and throw a bomb at him.
Let's scrag that son of a bitch.
Oh man, yeah, it's so American military because they we'll just stand around this manhole, one of our guys which got violently pulled through, and we'll just shoot our guns down into it, and then we'll drop a satchel charge down into it.
Yeah, I feel like that did it. Yeah, I feel like that did it too. Yeah, all right, everyone, you can go home now. Game over.
And then that only seems to antagonize the blob because it ends up like breaking up out of the street and starts sort of rampaging through the town. The first big tentacle comes up out of like the manhole thing, and it slams down on the road, and it's apparently sends out like a shockwave because all the windows in the city just like break, which I thought was a cool shot and nice little touch.
It's the little things too. I was also instantly reminded of The Thing because one of the soldier guys comes out with a flamethrower. It's like, well, this worked in the other movie, so clearly to work here. Oh god, no! And because again,
this actually ends up blocking the flamethrower and stop him from using it, and it backfires and just like blows the guy up.
Just big nopes him with this like fucking Tom and Jerry own, and all I could think to myself is like, wow, that is a man on fire, because this is the 80s before computer-generated special effects. They just lit a man on fire for this.
And he was on fire for ages.
He really was. I'm like, I hope he's okay.
And so the blob ends up killing a bunch of people, and there's a really cool kill that I really like where the blob's like tentacle hits like a person and it peels back up, and it's obviously done in stop motion because like the person's body it's obviously like a model of a person's body is like stuck on the underside of the blob's like tentacle, and it like pulls it up with it. It's just really funny shot.
Really, really good effect. Yeah, when it's just rampaging through the town. This is the height of stop motion animation where it's like, yes, I can see what you're doing here, but it's very good stop motion animation. This, of course, leads us into the big finale where everyone has to, barricade City Hall and everything there, like a classic monster movie, like, the zombies are coming, we gotta barricade City Hall.
And yeah, we've got to, like, barricade City Hall, we got to use the fire extinguishers to keep the blob at bay because it doesn't like the cold. This is also where Deputy Bill gets pulled through the bookcase, like we were saying earlier, gets folded up and pulled through the bookcase.
This, of course, too, is also where, Meg kind of really, I believe the trope for this is called takes a level in Action Girl. She's already saved her brother. She's already, doing everything she can to help barricade the walls and help defend the place. And by the end of this, she actually ends up picking up a fucking gun, which is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, she becomes Ellen Ripley.
Okay, I'm so glad you said that, because that was my thought. I'm like, wait, was this before or after Alien?
Yeah, she ends up picking up one of the soldiers' assault rifles, and I think the actress actually had some training, because when she's firing the gun, she doesn't actually blink at all, like you would see with some actors who maybe haven't had any training. They end up blinking when the gun goes off, but she doesn't at all.
Shawnee Smith is so cool, and has remained so cool for so long, over, like, what is it, like 12 goddamn Saw movies? I'm so glad that she just has this amazing body of work.
Yeah, she tries to cause a distraction for the Blob just while Brian gets the snow machine up and running, and you think that, like, he's going to win against it, because, you know, it doesn't like the cold. He's, like, hitting it with all this ice and snow and everything, but it just ends up, like, hitting the car out of the way, hitting the truck out of the way, and it just sends it flying and sends the big canister flying down the street away from it. So effectively they've, like, just lost their biggest weapon against the Blob.
Yeah, at every turn the Blob 1988 is like, nah, not that easy, nah.
The heroes do end up pivoting their plan, where Meg draws it towards the big CO2 ice canister that fell off the back of the truck, because her plan is to blow it up with one of these soldiers' satchel charges, and thus she ends up getting stuck on it, which I thought was... I legit, when I first saw this film, thought, oh, they're going to kill her off here.
Yeah, what if the final girl is not the final girl?
Yeah, what if Kevin Dillon and his luscious long hair is the final girl?
Yeah, well, you know, he's so beautiful as it is, you know, he didn't really need a final girl. He can do everything, he can play both parts. And yeah, they do it, and it's a pretty damn big-ass explosion and a pretty cool effect.
And yeah, the canister goes off and it ends up flash freezing the Blob into, like, the little crystals we saw earlier in the diner. And it's seemingly stored in the ice house of the diner. It's never really made clear what happens to the Blob in this film after that, because in the original it gets taken to the Arctic because it's frozen and they want to keep it frozen.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, they drop it in the Arctic where it's like, now it will never be able to reform. That's great. What I really like is that this whole movie has been predicated on, like, you know, oh, we're a dying skiing town because it hasn't snowed here for years, and now, you know, Brian, the bad kid, the punk, the kid with the problem with authority, for a shining moment, he brought winter and snow back to the town.
Yeah, and it's like now snowing again in the town and everything. But the only thing I could really think of is that, okay, you've just blown up the Blob, it's now, like, snowing, like, bits of it. Like, they're gonna defrost, and, you know, people are, like, consuming it, like, inhaling it and everything. Is it just gonna get into someone now?
The ending begs a lot of questions, and you see a lot of, like, big conspiracy monster movies like this, where it's like, we have defeated the threat, now we need to rush ahead to the end of the movie, because if we stop and think about any of this for too long, it all falls apart.
Yep.
Attack the Block is famously like that too, and I love Attack the Block, but it's like, no, we really need to end right now, because if we had to deal with the fallout, that's basically a whole other movie.
yeah.
But then we also do kind of get a whole other movie at the end, because we see the Reverend who stole a little bit of the Blob for himself, who got burned during the flamethrower explosion. He's doing weirdo tent revivals, telling people that the Blob actually represents the end of days and that the apocalypse is coming because of the Blob.
Instead of holding up snakes, he's holding up the Blob. In the 4K version, you can kind of see, like, I think it's like a rod or something up underneath the hand. And very weird shot, but, like, it sets up a sequel.
That never happened, because the original Blob movie actually did get a sequel, and it did involve a weird preacher too, so this is, like, kind of setting up a remake sequel?
Yeah, it never got a sequel, because the film actually bombed. No. It made, like, $8 million on, like, a $10 million budget, so it bombed spectacularly.
Yes, a famous flop, a famous failure that only in the intervening years has kind of managed to develop this cult following around it.
Yeah, the cult following is how I found out about it.
And I only found out about it just a couple weeks ago from you. And you know what? You've made me a believer. I can see why this is a cult movie, because, you know, the effects are super cool. It bucks a lot of horror movie trends at the time. It has a great cast of people who we would love in things for years to come after this. And yeah, it's a lot smarter and a lot funnier and a lot more interesting than you would think something like this would be.
I wonder if maybe because it didn't do all the horror tropes of the time is why it failed. Like people were so
maybe
used to like a certain routine happening.
Yeah, again, people say, you know, oh, when will Hollywood ever innovate? When will Hollywood ever do something different outside the box? Then the second they do it, that movie becomes a pariah and they hate it because it didn't follow, you know, the script they have in their head.
Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, I enjoyed this for my first time seeing it. Yeah, I thought it was a fun little creature feature. No fat on the bone on this one, really.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty tight script for a horror film.
It's lean, it's mean, it's an hour 30. Again, it makes interesting choices, and yeah, it's funny, which, you know, is something you don't normally get for something like this. It's genuinely funny.
Yeah, it's gross. It's got great effects, great body horror. I love body horror
Very
in
gross.
horror films, and this has it in spades.
Does a lot right, and yeah, I think it's very deserving of the cult following that has sprung up around it for sure.
Okay, so what if this was to get a sequel? What do you think it would be? Because obviously it has to come off that end with the preacher. Like, what do you think the sequel would be?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was thinking about that too. Where the hell do you go from here? So I mean, yeah, it would have to be something with the priest. So it's like, okay, you know, are we making some sort of commentary on religion and televangelist? Like, does he maybe get on television with the Blob and starts telling people to be afraid? So maybe they try and get someone to infiltrate his cult to try and steal the Blob. Either for the government or maybe even for the Russians or something.
Yeah, or do you do like kind of like a legacy sequel like some have gotten recently where, you know, you set it 30 years after it's present day. We go back to the town where they've seemingly had it, on ice this entire time. Because again, the movie leaves it kind of vague of what the town does with it. And then it sort of comes back to life somehow. It thaws out.
An excellent question. I mean, what is it? Horror movie and sequel rules in general would say you would need to go bigger. This was in a small town, so it would need to be the Blob in like a metropolitan city. So like maybe
goes to New York.
Yeah, the Blob takes Manhattan. So like maybe they're moving it for some reason. Maybe they're like trying to take it to like Area 51 or some shit like that. And then maybe Russian spies end up intercepting it, and then it gets loose in New York City, and maybe Brian and Meg are in New York for some reason, because, you know, you want to bring back the original cast, and only they can defeat the Blob because they did it once before.
I always thought the original Blob had a really good setup for a modern day sequel, because obviously, like, since, you know, the 1950s, you know, global warming has kind of warmed everything up a little bit. So maybe it's like raised the temperature of the Arctic just enough so that the Blob can like acclimate itself. So it's like thaws itself and gets loose.
Yeah, that's what you do, Matt. You don't even make it a sequel to the remake. You make it a legacy sequel to the original is what you do. And it's like, the promise from the end of the original Blob came to pass. Oh, you do what they did with Candyman, where you think you're watching a new Blob movie, but no, it's actually a sequel to the original.
Yes. Yeah, and you bring back like characters from like this film, like your Brian and your Megs and stuff. Yeah.
And that's how you tie it all together. And, you know, you certainly say something about global warming being like, you know, the world needs to be colder or we'll forever deal with a Blob threat. You could maybe do something, be like, oh, you know, the Arctic border with the Russians and everything. This thing could start an international incident, maybe kickstart World War III if we're not careful.
Yeah. You could straight up just like remake The Thing, but with a Blob. It gets to like some Arctic base or something. I don't know.
Or you go the Terminator route and be like, okay, see, so the one that the messed up Reverend had, it's growing bigger now because he keeps feeding his followers to it, who are happy to do it because, you know, it's like a cult drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, he says that it like heals them or something.
Yeah, sacrifice me to the Blob. And the only way they defeat the evil Blob is if they reanimate the Blob from the first movie, but, you know, they teach it love and compassion and how to give thumbs up. So we have good Blob versus bad Blob.
Yeah, and like one's blue and one's like a reddish, pinkish color.
Yeah, color-coded for your convenience, you know.
Yeah, The Blob. So it's a great film. It's a little bit hard to find to watch. I think it's on Amazon to rent and buy.
It is for like $4.
I ended up buying the 4K Shout Factory version just because I wanted to see it on the big screen. But definitely check it out if you want a great, you know, snappy horror film.
Yeah, this is a perfect movie too to, if this year when you're having a Halloween party, put this one on in the background.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those watch with a group of people films.
Yeah, it definitely it hits us that special. It hits that special little note where it's like, they don't quite make them like this anymore, which is funny because it's a remake.
Yeah.
They don't remake them like this anymore, let's put it that way.
Yeah, so thank you everybody for joining us here on the Multiverse Movie Club. I really appreciate it. Me and Joel put a lot of work into this. I put a lot of work into editing all of this together. So to be really appreciate if you would like, subscribe, share around the video if you like it. Tell us in the comments what movies we should actually watch. We've got a list going, but we're always adding to it. If you have something, throw it out there and I'll put it on the list and we'll get round to it eventually. But thank you everybody for joining us, and I hope you enjoy it, and until the next one.